I'm waiting on a delivery of thread to continue the Mount Melick piece, but my hands are itching, so let's do a small project in the meantime. I'll be trying out Limerick Lace, but it's not real Limerick Lace. I'm using the wrong thread and maybe even the wrong fabric. But this is just for funsies, guys. I really want to try out some filling stitches and I want to make a collar. The book says to use cotton thread in number 50, but I'll be using what I already have, which is this ball of 60 thread. The outline thread should be the 50 thread doubled, but I don't have loads of this, and it was kind of hard to get this ball in my location, so for the outline I'll be cheesing it with this leftover cotton number 10 from my Christmas doily spray. And because this is all wrong, I'm not even using a Limerick Lace pattern. This pattern is taken from a Carrick Macross lace book. I traced it, flipped it, and then traced it onto another piece of paper, and then taped them together to get my pattern. I'm cutting out a piece of white tulle, slightly larger than the pattern. This was a remnant that I picked up ages ago with some needle run lace in mind. I still don't have an embroidery frame and I don't want to stuff this paper pattern into my hoop, so I'm simply pinning the paper pattern to the fabric. This is an experiment. I'm hoping the pins hold up, but looking back at the footage, I can see the pins falling out in real time. The outline thread on Limerick Lace is meant to start a certain way, where you double the thread and attach it to the net by passing the needle through the loop. But I'm the worst, so I'm just securing using 2 small knots at the start of the thread. In Limerick Lace, you would outline the pattern using the double thread. I'm starting by doing the outside and working inwards from right to left. I'm left-handed, so this was done in the hope of less stabbing incidents. I did still get pricked by pins, but there was no gory stain removal needed, unlike in the Learning Mount Melick video. The design is outlined by going over and under the bars of the tulle, keeping as close to the original design as possible. I'm tracing over all the shapes on the pattern with my big fat thread in a way that I'm sure would make any actual lace maker cringe. To keep the pointed edges really sharp, I eventually learned to put the thread through the post backwards, so it sort of loops back on itself. I'm also snipping the ends as I go and making sure those knots are as snug as I can get them. On day 2, I continued to outline the piece. There's some major issues with this lace. The holding knots are all unravelling in the thicker thread. I think it's just too thick. And if I ever do a bigger, proper piece of Limerick Lace and do it correctly, I'll definitely be using a finer thread doubled instead of a thicker one. For now, I'm just whipping any loose knots into place with some fine white sewing thread for a classy, lumpy effect. It's a bit rotten, but this is an experiment, so it's fine. I'm also moving the pins into the pattern as it's completed, both to give the areas I'm working some extra hold and to minimise stabbings. I was definitely gored a few times, but thankfully I managed not to stain the collar. At the end of the day, she's looking like this. It's so sweet and delicate. I love the way it's coming out. Despite those loose knots and some questionable tracing skills, it's really cute. I love how transparent it is. It's really different from the Mount Melick lace. It's also coming together really quickly. Here's some footage of me closing off the thread. I come to the end of the shape, do 2 knots really close together. If this was polyester, I'd be tempted to take a lighter and to melt the ends in. I also considered some glue once everything started to unravel, but I got better at knots as I went. The collar won't hold up to any vigorous use, but again, I'm not really a needle worker. I'm more of a knitter on holiday in the world of lace, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Day 3, I finished the outlines. I did the last little bit on the upper left hand side and then the inner border of the collar. The whole time, I just couldn't believe how fast this was. If I was a pieceworker in Edwardian times, I would have been lashing these out. I got really lucky over these few days. I didn't have much to work on before or after work, so I was able to sink right into this project and really focus. Now I just need to take all of these pins out. And she's off the pattern. Look at her, she's transparent, she's chic. I love it so much. At this point I decided I'd done enough and packed it in for the night. Day 4, the padded hoop is back out. I took it off the Mount Melick piece because I'm not using it until my thread arrives. I very carefully put the collar in. I just know these knots are going to not like being squished into a hoop, and one clumsy move could unravel all this work. There's 2 types of filling stitch in this piece, using the number 50 thread. One is a single darn, where you pick up the little squares of the tulle and weave through them. And one is the double darn, where you do that, but then you do it again in the same space, but going in the opposite direction, so it makes a cross. I picked a direction for my thread to go early on. I want it to all kind of point the same way. I decided to fill in the shamrocks with single darn and the border scrolls with double darn. I will say, the knots made with the finer thread are way more secure. This is probably why they used a doubled over fine thread in the real Limerick lace and not a fat crochet cotton like my weak imitation. Here's me putting my hand behind the single and double darn so you can see the difference in their transparency. So I continued filling them in, carefully moving the lace within the hoop as I went. I didn't film everything in the filling stage because a lot of it was the same thing over and over. I took this project to the sofa and came back with a fully filled in piece. Here she is, she's done, and she looks amazing. I had big plans to fill in these leafy things with a decorative filling stitch and maybe add some pops. But my Mount Melick thread arrived today, and I want to keep going on the piano shawl, so it's time to cut her out. I'm taking a lace scissors and carefully severing the tulle around the edge of the stitches. This was nerve-wracking, oh my god, one wrong move and it would all fall apart. I made sure not to cut any boxes that had thread going through them. To be honest, this was the part of the process that had the least detail I could find about what to do in the lace book or on the internet. I just had to guess, pray and cut the tulle away. Here's a time lapse. This took forever, you just have to trust me. And now she's released from her prison, the collar is done. Well, just about. I did take a minute to whip down any knots that had come loose with some sewing thread. I pinched the loose end back onto the secure thread, and then went around both of them together nice and tight with the finest white thread that I own. Here's me modelling the collar really quick. I'm not a history-bounding girly, so I don't have a black Edwardian dress. I have a festive Adidas shirt instead. Okay, back to work now. Bye bye.